as a teacher in his work, really, I mean, in this work in the Risala, then to try to help people to see how to apply this very directly in their lives.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Could I just say something on that as well? I have been wondering, you know, what's the relevance of a text like this to modernity? And the answer is really that a text like Jafar Sadiq's is purely qualitative. And therefore, it actually is applicable at all times, because you always remain a human being, whether you're in 7th century or 21st century. And so for me, it's perhaps the most applicable and most relevant of all the commentaries, because it pertains to the immutable aspects of our being. Yeah, so I think it is.
I have a question, but just before I ask, I wanted to mention, it's irresistible that in the passage from the Ikhwan that I didn't read about the crucifixion, it's quite explicit that it was the Nasut that was crucified and the Lahut endured, lived. So this is how they understand walakin shubahal.
Yeah. Yeah.
The question is, I think it's probably the answer is negative, but given the beauty of your presentation and the subject matter, desire being such a centerpiece, does Qusayri use the Kuntu Kanzan Makfiyan hadith at all?
I haven't come across it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, but he talks so much about this irada. That's what really I kept saying, and always pairing it with many times with ada, as saying these two cannot coexist. You cannot think in this sort of ordinary default, you know, animal-human type way of thinking, and have this irada. It's one or the other, basically, you know, and you will always, if you mix them up, you know, you will dilute it, and you will have nothing, basically.
Yeah, well, my question springs from the fact that that hadith, of course, is I was a hidden treasure. I loved or desired to be known, so I created creation. So it would seem to fit his program perfectly that, in fact, it is not our desire that we are loving God with, but his desire, his primordial desire, which is infused in us.
Well,
so,
and that's when I said that he says the desire that you feel into you for the spiritual path is not your desire; it is Allah's desire. So that's very similar there. And then, of course, he's always in that hadith. The word is hub. He's always referring to that. And of course, the very choice of deciding to use so much secular poetry, right? I mean, is you know, I mean, I have a talk I'm giving next week, which I say it's like quoting a Federico Fellini movie or Mick Jagger lyrics, commenting on the Qur'an. It's outrageous, right? But there's no question that he's always taking out just what he wants to make people see that this yearning, or that you know, all of these wonderful qualities that humans can experience in this world are all ultimately, you know, telling us about God's attributes. Then, and so I mean, I hadn't seen him use that hadith, but it's completely consonant with it at all times. Yeah.
Last one.
So, Kristin, as you promised me, you did come up with lots of poetry that was interesting, and the fact that you mentioned that this is clearly secular poetry. I mean, he has Abu Nuwas and Mutanabbi.
Yeah. Abu Nuwas is outrageous. He's totally outrageous. When he talks about whining young boys, he means whining young boys.
Yeah,
right? None of this,
and
there's no metaphor involved.
Ghazali quotes Abu Nuwas in the Munqidh, where he says, you know, kana ma kana.
Yeah.
So you have that tradition very early on with Qusayri as well. Again, I thought that qualitatively, and you know better with Qusayri, it's a very different kind of, it's a proof text in some ways, quoting something that people know, and also showing what you just mentioned in your comment to Todd, that it shows also the intertwining of the physical love and the feelings of love in this world, and how they really mirror and reflect upon that other.
And what he does is what's really interesting to me is that, and in this paper, I can't really do that as well as in the paper I'm doing next weekend, is show how he follows the juxtapositions in the Quran between the legal text and then, you know, like if you look at the text on fasting, for instance, all of a sudden, smack in the middle, it says, you know, has this little, you know, really beautiful verse in it, which I'm going to butcher if I try to remember it right now, so I'm not going to, but that he follows these juxtapositions traditions and ends up showing how it is the dunya through which we see God's signs then, right? And by staying with it. So he's not afraid to talk about a verse on divorce and then switch right from that to, you know, something that would seem to be much more esoteric. Because it's all of a piece to him. It really is. And this is why poetry is so useful for him to illustrate this also as well. Yeah.
So within that context, I thought, you started off with the hermeneutics of desire, and which Michael Sells has talked about in different contexts, the languages of unsaying. I was wondering from at least the material that you presented today, whether it was more a sort of hermeneutics within desire, but in this particular case, at least the examples you give highlight more of letting go, right? With Moses' mother, all of that. There's an hermeneutics.
Well, that's why I said he's teaching you how to be a good lover, right? I mean, people are not good lovers if they don't let go. You can't experience love if you don't let go, right? And right? I mean, it's just not possible. So this is why I like it, because, you know, we've all read mystical love, you know, and all this stuff, but how do we get from here to there, right? It's not that, you know, people think, you know, okay, well, so you feel this love for God one day, but the next day, you know, there's nothing, absolutely nothing. But this is what he talks about, right? And so that's why I mentioned he's talking about the lack of these things there, and then what to do to cultivate a mode of living in this world and doing things that will strengthen and cultivate desire then.
So he's not talking about abandoning the world, because at times it sounds like he's you know, saying withdraw totally.
No, he's saying that you have to, you abandon the ordinary ways in which the self responds to the world, which is different.
Totally, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.